We rode with them. We talked about their aspirations. We didn't start with, it's going to be an EV. I always tell the team that we know nothing, right? You need to step back and listen.
Hello, Matt. Welcome to London and welcome to FF Radio.
Thank you so much. It's a lovely spot.
Thank you very much. For people who have yet to see you in the Flying Flea world, could you just introduce yourself and explain what you do within Flying Flea?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Cardenas, and I head our EV strategy for Flying Flea and Royal Enfield.
Fantastic. Now, I've been very keen to talk to you because the knowledge that you have of this product, due to the fact that you've been there from the very start, is staggering. So what I want to know is, we kind of spoke to Mario about this. Where do you go from a blank sheet of paper saying there's going to be an EV, it's going to be called Flying Flea, and it's going to be for a city plus environment? How do you start?
I think the key there is we didn't start with, it's going to be an EV. Right? We started from, how do we make motorcycling or the joy of riding sustainable long term? That's our biggest challenge, and everyone's biggest challenge is how, as the world is changing, people are moving into cities, so geography is changing, demographics are changing, and in some locations, motorcycling or the joy of motorcycling is coming under threat, either through other things that we can spend our money on. A good friend of mine who's a designer said that we don't compete anymore with motorcycles. We compete with the latest phone.
Wow,
right?
okay.
Because essentially you can spend your money on so many other things, and all those things cost a lot more. And if motorcycling isn't bringing that joy, then people aren't going to come to it. So when we think sustainable, it's bringing new people in. It's a sustainable form of transportation, something that governing bodies aren't going to try to attack, right? That you're bringing a new value to transportation and to the joy of riding. So when we framed it in that framework, obviously EV is part of that. There are a lot of different powertrains that we looked at, but EV was a key part of that. Then we looked at, can we create an EV, or can we take this new powertrain, regardless of what it is, and create something better than what was there, right?
Okay,
There's no point in just creating an EV to create an EV. It has to be a better experience.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So it wasn't a case of we want to create an EV. It was a case of we have identified a use case and a need, and we know that customers need something that does X, and EV is the best platform to provide that. Yeah.
And how can EV as a powertrain make that even better? Because it gives you a lot of benefits. So power to weight, amazing power to weight for an EV. So where does that benefit? Actually, it benefits in the city when you just want to get out in front of traffic, right? It's much easier to use. So for some people that enjoy shifting gears on a long ride, for them, obviously there's no benefit. But when you get in the city, that same person probably isn't really having fun shifting gears, right? Or learning or using a clutch, because it's just more things to concentrate on when there's so many things happening around you. So EV is an amazing opportunity for us to create this completely new experience, and that's why we define it around the city. But we all love riding motorcycles. Riding in the city isn't going to bring most people joy, right? There's this desire to go outside of the city, and that's the key of City Plus for us, or I like to call it urban and suburban exploration.
Sure. Okay.
Even when I'm riding to work, I'm exploring a new route. I'm finding a little road a dirt road that's closed and seeing what's at the end of that road, right?
Okay, so you have this starting point. How do you... Obviously, we know about the inspiration of the original Flying Flea, and it's an inspiration of the inspiration and the ethos of that bike with its lightweight nature and its innovative design. Once you've identified the parameters in which you want this product to live, where do you go? What's the next move?
So we don't define the parameters. The key is we listen to a lot of riders, right? So this idea, this concept came from, we see this macro trend, but macro trends are quite useless, actually.
Yeah.
It really matters how it applies at the grassroots level, the person who's making that buying decision. So to understand that, we have to have empathy for a rider. We have to go out and find that group of riders or future riders or motorcycle adjacent people and understand what gets them excited. What challenges do they have? What are they looking for in a two-wheeler? And we did that for many years across, we say over 5,000, but thousands of riders that we interacted with in different ways to then define a need, right? And it's a set of needs, quite a long document. But for us, really, when we looked at it, what does it matter? The riders that were interested had no idea what their 0 to 60 time was, but they knew, I'm sick of listening to this scooter, I just want to get out in front. Or I don't feel safe when I'm stuck amongst the cars, I want to be able to get out in front.
Sure.
And that applied across everything. We looked at styling. What was important from a styling standpoint, that they wanted it to say something about who they were. They wanted it to be a luxury investment that they lived with for a long time. They wanted it to be iconic visually and make a statement. And so rather than saying it has to have a girder fork, we left that up to the amazing designers and engineers to say, okay, it has to be iconic. We know that it has to have this acceleration, and we know it has to be really easy to use. And we identify that there is this historical motorcycle in our lineup that really gives us the right to really bring that same visual back into the market. Right? I think we are the only ones that really own that ability to do that category properly.
Absolutely. And to be clear, for those perhaps listening or watching who aren't familiar with this product development, when you talk about this feedback you're getting, that is you and a team literally going to locations globally and being with customers, asking all these questions, try the seat this way, do you like the pegs this way, how does this look, benchmarking, and you did that with over 5,000 people.
Yeah, so different phases. So we did online research, we lived in people's houses, we rode with them, we talked about their aspirations, we asked them to take us where they like to have chai, where they like to hang out with their friends, to their gelato shops. We were very progressive in that we actually created concept vehicles and we let customers ride them. Right when we had this idea, so we need to test more, we need to have more confidence in this direction. So we created concept bikes and we brought customers out and they rode them.
And that's unusual because usually a manufacturer would retain a concept vehicle, maybe take it to a show and say this is what's coming, but you actually had people getting hands-on with the development of the bike.
Yeah, absolutely. It was to know, the question is how light is too light? How much power is too much power? So we were proposing something that was less than half the weight. That was a big shift for the company. But it achieved that. I need to get out in front of that car, right? That was the only way to do that, was to lighten the vehicle.
Yeah, and the only way that what's too light, what's not light enough, is through that testing, and not just from people like yourself who have years of experience, but from the actual end target customer.
Yeah, I always tell the team that we know nothing, right? Even though collectively, I would say on the team working on it, there's probably 20, well over 50 years of experience on those that are talking to customers, interacting on a daily basis. And that doesn't include all of the hundreds of engineers that we have, all of that. But even with that combined experience, you know nothing, right? You need to step back and listen to their problems, listen to how they interact with it, but give them enough information that they can feed back to you in a positive way. Don't ask them leading questions.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's not just a case of you have to actually... Yeah, I guess that's a tricky thing because not everybody thinks they're an expert, right? So then not everybody perhaps feels that they have an opinion to give that's needed, but every opinion is needed, I guess.
You'd be surprised. Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah, that's true.
If you just are quiet and listen, everyone has an opinion. And the big guideline that we give to the team is when you've interacted deeply with somebody and you walk away, did you learn something?
Okay.
And that's important because, and I don't care what you learned. You could have learned something, but it has to be something you never knew before. And it could have been that they make a gelato that's the flavor of, the clouds. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything. but you have to have learned something. If you didn't, then go back.
Okay,
because you didn't
sure.
you didn't talk to them. You didn't empathize with them enough.
Okay. And how do you think that level of connection and listening to customers, how do you think that's really affected the end product here?
I think it's given us the ability to set targets that are industry leading and groundbreaking, right? And you can only do that when there's buy-in that those targets are the right targets. And
which comes from all the qualified, on the ground, looking people in the eye and finding out what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And having confidence that you did it in a way that gives you really good data back, that you gave them enough information that they're making a strong educated decision and not just trying to feed back what you're asking them or what they think you want to hear. So after we understand those sets of needs, then it gets to the part where we set the specification.
Okay.
And that is with a cross-functional group. So at the time, I think we had 6 countries represented across 7 divisions within Royal Enfield. So the idea that very widespread people that are going to be core and crucial to the program. And we put them in the same scenarios that the riders were feeding back to us. So it was a multi-day ride where we take everything, the best products on the market, some of the concept vehicles that we had created at that point, and we went out and we rode and we said, okay, here's the problem that they have. Here's the description. How good are all of these? Do any of them meet the target? If not, what should the target be? And that is the crucial step that I think we as a company are one of the few that can do that. That we, for many of those attributes, we said, no, actually, everybody is to the left, to the right is better. Mm-hmm. We need to be 2 steps to the right.
Right, okay.
Which means that we have to develop new technology. And at that point, the team, our senior management team realized that the targets are right and that we needed to really invest in creating something new.
And it's a really good point you make there. I wanted to talk to you about this. It's difficult for us to explain quite how much innovation is involved in this bike.
Yeah.
Did that come from, as you say, it wasn't out there, so we made it ourselves? Was that the kind of motto?
100%. And it's not, we weren't looking for innovation, but we were looking to solve problems in a more valuable way, bringing that extra value that we can. And an EV architecture helps you because the entire vehicle is connected. Now, just by nature, there's many more sensors. You don't have to control this combustion cycle, but you have to control all these electrons that move. Therefore, everything's wired. There's a lot more sensors. We knew that, okay, how can we take that and leverage that to create this new experience? But we didn't care about the technology so much, but it was the experience. Like, we want to make the bike easier to get in and around the city. Simple, right? That has about 20 different elements below it, right? And one of my favorite ones was our key. And the fact that since connected is baked into the architecture, right? So we have defined the hardware of the vehicle and the software of the vehicle. So we own the entire experience. That then we can say, all right, what does that mean? That means more than just your phone as a key. It actually means that now, for not much, we can integrate an electronic headstock lock. We can integrate electronic charging port lock. We can integrate a wheel lock. We can integrate an alarm, because all of these elements are on the vehicle. And what that results in is, I walk up to my bike, it recognizes me right away. I push the button, it's ready to ride. That's all it takes. But when I'm stopping, 20 times in a day, running around the city, each of those add up, right?
So incrementally, the time savings in having a really efficient bike where the tech is working with you, not against you, can actually really save you time over the course of a day, a week, your life.
Yeah, and you might not even realize it, right? It just becomes seamlessly integrated into your life. And that's how we wanted the tech to feel. We didn't want you to ever be overwhelmed with the tech, but we wanted it to integrate seamlessly. And
perfect.
Internally, we quote this number, and I'll get the number wrong, but I think we have 130 tech-related features that we've designed into a bike for a company that generally we have about 4 or 5, right? So it's an order of magnitude higher than we've ever done before, but ultimately, that's just a number because there's only a handful of unique experiences that we're creating. But we require a huge tech stack to do that seamlessly.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for the insight. And I'm sure we'll speak to you again soon.
Definitely.